Hello, my name is Jeremy Barnes, and today I'm going to be doing a review for The Suicide Squad, the 2021 movie by James Gunn from DC Comics. So I'm going to break my review up into one part that's just a generalized review, where I go into different aspects of the movie, and then in the second half or the end of the video, it'll be spoilers where I talk about specifics. So first I'm going to start off with characters and a little bit of their arc throughout the movie because there's a lot of characters. So, um, and also don't mind me, I'm also going to be eating some blueberries during my review, so hope you don't mind that. But I'm going to start off with first who's on my shirt, Harley Quinn. And she was great in this movie. I would say that this is probably my second favorite appearance of her after Birds of Prey, but Birds of Prey was basically her movie, so it would make sense that she would shine a little bit more in that one. Because here she's definitely not the main character. She stands out a lot, of course, but I would say the main character is actually probably Bloodsport, which is a new character. So Harley Quinn. Before I move on to Bloodsport, her arc was like it didn't have too much of like a change from beginning to end, but I feel like since her initial appearance she has changed a lot, and where she is now is definitely at a different place from both of her previous appearances. And I do like that they fleshed out a little bit more of her character, and I feel like this movie definitely got into a little bit of the crazier side of Harley, so that was really cool. So now I'm gonna move into Bloodsport, and Bloodsport was also great. He was probably my favorite character in the movie. He was pretty much just awesome. Like his costume was cool. He had like some technology that was really cool, and it was basically like part of his armor or his suit that he wears, where it kind of gives him any weapon that he wants almost. That's what it seemed like. So he had a lot of cool guns and some other weapons that were really cool. And his helmet is dope. Uh, it's like a little skull on the bottom, but then it has a visor on the top. But it's just a badass look, and he was a badass. He's like a marksman. I think that's what he's known for. And one thing that I'll mention is that his story is similar to Deadshot's story from the original Suicide Squad movie from 2016, um, where like his motivation for joining the squad or doing these missions is similar to Deadshot's in that it was motivated by his daughter. And that's not really a spoiler because it was revealed in the trailers. So that was kind of interesting in the movie. Like, I don't know if I necessarily like that about the movie, but it's just how it was. And it was like a good aspect to the story, I think. I kind of feel like I cared more about that dynamic in the original movie than I did here, but it definitely wasn't bad. It it's just that I don't know, just because of how similar it was, it just didn't stand out to me in like a really positive way. Bloodsport also had like a hero arc where in the beginning he kind of doesn't start off as a hero, he's just a straight up villain, but by the end of the movie he becomes a hero, and the team overall become heroic figures even though they were previously looked at as bad guys. And that's kind of the story for both Suicide Squad movies, so that one doesn't change here, but Bloodsport definitely stands out in that regard, which makes sense because, like I said, he was the like main character. But now I'm going to talk about Rick Flag, another returning character from the first movie. He was the like military dude who kind of was the point person that kind of led the team in the first movie. And here he has a similar position, but Bloodsport actually takes a little bit more of the charge in this one. But Rick Flag, he was good. I definitely liked him a lot more in this one than the first movie, but I didn't like love him still. Like I still didn't like him as much as Harley or Bloodsport or some of the other characters in this movie. But I definitely liked him more than I did before, and he was really cool in this one. He kind of had an arc as well in this movie where he goes to a more straight and narrow, um, like military dude to somebody who is like a little bit hesitant, about like what he's doing, I guess. But that's all I'll say about that for now. Because if I say any more, it'll be a little bit spoilerish. Now I'm gonna talk about Peacemaker. He was the one played by John Cena, and he was great. Like John Cena as an actor, I haven't really like loved, and I kind of didn't like. Like I've been negative towards it, but I feel like he's actually been getting better at acting. And I feel like this is either one of or definitely like his best role so far in terms of his acting. Um, he's still like pretty goofy, which is like matches his actual real life personality. And he's been doing a lot of like comedies or comedic roles, but he also does manage to have other layers in there as well in his performance. And the writing also helped that I think a lot. So that was really cool, and he's another like character that really stood out to me. And he's actually getting an HBO Max series, so we'll be able to see more of him there. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. I don't know if he had as much of an arc as some of the others. But yeah, but he was cool though. So now I'm gonna talk about King Shark, and King Shark was great. He served mostly as comedic relief in the movie, but it was really cool as well. Um, and similar to Peacemaker, I don't think there was much of like a character arc from the beginning to the end of the movie. Um, but I guess there was some development in just the way that he sees people, because obviously King Shark is not a human. So the way he interacted with people at the beginning of the movie is different from the way that he thinks and feels about people. I think by the end, or at least amongst his teammates on the Suicide Squad. So I thought that was really cool. And he's just a really strong, powerful character, and really cool and funny. And he was actually voiced by Sylvester Stallone, which I think he did a really great job. Because you could tell that it's him if you like really pay attention, but if you don't know that Sylvester Stallone's in the movie, you might not know who he is. And he's definitely not playing himself. Like he's not just speaking as King Shark. He is doing something with his voice where he is changing it a little bit to match this character who is portrayed as like childlike, definitely. Like he kind of reminded me a little bit of the Hulk and Thor Ragnarok, and maybe also another James Gunn movie, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 with Baby Groot. Um, but I think he's more closer to Hulk than Groot, I would say. So now I'm going to talk about Ratcatcher 2, who is the daughter of Ratcatcher 1. Like, that's why there's numbers to this person. And I'd say that she was good in the movie. She was like more of the heart of the team, and I think she Bloodsport had a really great hero arc, but honestly, she doesn't really seem like a villain. Like I guess she just made a bad mistake, and that's why she was locked up in Belle Reve with all these other members of the Suicide Squad. But she actually seemed like a really cool and nice person. So it didn't take much for her to have that hero arc to her. But overall, like I didn't care too much for her character. Like I didn't fall in love with her, but she was cool and she was good. Um, and she had a really great moment at the end of the movie, so that was dope. So now I'm gonna talk about the Polka-Dot Man, and I would say he was also a good character. He had an interesting backstory, and it's kind of deep, but also really funny in a way. And I would say he also had a great arc. Um, his arc is tied to his backstory, which is a little spoilerish, so I'm not gonna really say anything more about that. But he actually had a really cool power set. Like, and on the surface, he seemed like a really goofy character. But there's definitely more to him than you might assume or think, and he's definitely like different. Like he's really kind of like isolated, where he doesn't talk a lot, and he's like, I think he has like a negative outlook on life or just himself. Um, and some of more of those positive aspects come out in the movie like later on. So that was really cool. But yeah, that's all I'll say for him. And then there's another character called Savant, who was played by Michael Rooker, who was also in the Guardians of the Galaxy as Yandu. Um, and he was cool. Uh, he was also like, I feel like a lot of these Suicide Squad members are just like marksmen, like they just have really good aim. And he was one of those characters. I don't know if this is his main thing or what, but when we first see him, he has a ball, and that's what he uses to like target things or people or whatever. Um, but I don't really know much more about him. But he was cool while he was there. And then Captain Boomerang is another returning character from the first movie. And whereas I loved Captain Boomerang, he was one of my favorite characters in the first movie. I thought he was really lame in this one. Like the way they used him, I did not like. Um, and that's all I'll say about that. Then there was another character called the Thinker, which I've actually seen in the Flash TV series, the live action one with Grant Gustin, and he was also a good character. He was pretty cool, but I think he was a bit underused, so I didn't like care for him that much because he just wasn't in the movie enough. But I liked him while he was there. And then the enemy of the movie is Starro the Conqueror, which is like this giant starfish from space. And Starro was awesome. Like it's kind of like a goofy character, like Polka-Dot Man on the surface. Like when you just see Starro, it's kind of goofy because it's just like this giant starfish that is you're supposed to find threatening. But if you see that, you might not be like threatened by it, unless you were like under it, like literally right in front of it, where it could just step on you and squash you like a grape or a blueberry. Um, but Starro is actually like pretty scary. Like the way that they portray it was really cool. It is portrayed in a slightly comedic aspect, but there is some seriousness and stakes to it. And I'd say that overall, Starro wasn't as cool as some other kaiju's that Warner Bros. Has recently made a movie about, King Kong or Godzilla, but it was still pretty cool. And just the way that it works and everything, and kind of the story behind Starro in the movie was also really interesting. So I really like what they did with that. Now I'm gonna talk about the action in the movie, and I would say overall the action was good, but it didn't really blow me away. So I wouldn't say that it was like great or like amazing or anything like that. But it definitely wasn't bad. I just wasn't like super impressed by it, but it was definitely enjoyable still. And with the R rating, it did have, I think, a little bit more stakes. Like it felt like anything could happen at any time. So I did like that aspect of it. But overall, I wasn't blown away by the action. The humor was a little bit better, but it also was not great for me. Like I feel like all the jokes landed, like they worked. They just weren't like laugh out loud hilarious to me overall throughout the whole movie. But it was good. Like it definitely didn't like in my opinion, nothing like fumbled for me. So that was good because nobody likes comedy that doesn't work. That's always pretty bad. But Now I'm gonna just talk about the plot structure because that was something that stood out to me, and I would say that the plot structure I didn't care for overall. Like, it's not completely linear. Like, it is mostly linear, but it does jump around a little bit, and I didn't like one use of that because it took me out of the action when it was like starting to get really good. So I was just thrown off by that. And I'll talk about it more specifically now that I go into the spoilers. So I'm gonna go right in now. So this is your warning. Now I'm gonna talk about spoilers. So I'm gonna go off that last part and talk about the structure. And the part that I was talking about, it was at the end when it went back. I think it was like 8 minutes earlier after they showed the building collapse in Jotunheim, and then they went back to the other team that we didn't see the people inside the building originally, because they did split up. Um, but right before that cut, it was like a crazy high intensity moment where Peacemaker kills Rick Flag, and that part was crazy. And then he's about to kill Ratcatcher too, and then it cuts. So then we're like what the hell? Um, so yeah, so I just didn't like that. It took me out of it. But once we got back to that moment, it was cool, and like leading up to it, I did like seeing the other side of that. But I kind of wish they would have just like in a way, I don't know like how it would have worked exactly, but if they just were cutting back and forth right away and it just moved uh more linearly like that. But I don't know. That's just me. So now I'm gonna talk about more of the characters that I didn't mention yet because they're like hardly in the movie because they all die. Um, but I'm gonna start off with Weasel just because I feel like Weasel was pretty pointless in the movie. Like I didn't like that in the beginning it seemed like he died, but then we find out at the very end of the movie that he didn't. But it's not until the end of the movie that we find that out. So like I don't know why he was even in the movie at all because he was not really used in any way. So I just thought he was wasted, but I hope they do something with him again in the future, where we do find out like who this thing or person is, um, and see at least one of his abilities, because we literally saw him do nothing except die and then not die. So I just didn't like that in the movie. And now I'm gonna talk about the other characters and like the way that each of them died and how I felt about their deaths, I guess. So Savant, he freaked out when he saw everybody else dying, and he just like ran away. So he was the one member of the Suicide Squad that was like killed by the bomb inside their heads, which is interesting because he's the one that we started the movie on, where they tell us about that aspect of the team, the Task Force X team. Um, and in the first movie, we saw that it was the Native American guy. I forgot his name, but he was like in that movie the like guinea pig to prove that they weren't messing around with those bombs. And Savant didn't serve that same purpose, but he was the one that died by that way. Everybody else in the beginning died just by getting killed by the military there when they stormed the beach, and that was kind of their whole purpose. I feel like they were there always just to be a distraction for the other team, which are like the main team and main characters of the movie. But TDK, played by Nathan Fillion, he was like funny. He has a probably the lamest power I've ever seen, where he's called TDK because it stands for the detachable kid. So his arms just like detached from his body, and he's just able to control them like telekinesis or something. So he's kind of like pointless. That's probably why they sent him there. But he was funny, and I didn't mind his death at all. Uh, so I liked him. He was cool. But Captain Boomerang, I hated that they killed him just because, like, I don't know why. Like, he was so cool in the first movie, and he really did not need to die in this one. So I hate like there's two extremes I feel in in terms of like stakes, in terms of like mortality in movies. There's one where like nobody dies, so you never feel any stakes for them because you know nobody's gonna die. And then there's the other side where you just kill people for no reason, like you just kill people just to kill them. And I feel like that's kind of one thing I didn't like about this movie, where a bunch of people are in this movie, they're introduced, and they're there just to die, and that's how Captain Boomerang was. But it sucks because he was a character from the first movie who was cool and we liked him. So like, why even include him in this movie if you're gonna kill him? Like they should have included somebody else that we either care less about or just take him out. Like you don't need all these people. So I don't know. I just didn't like that, especially because he never got to like really face the Flash. In the first Suicide Squad movie, we did see him in an interaction with the Flash, and that's how he was locked up in that movie. But they didn't really fight, so I don't know. Because he's supposed to be like a pretty popular Flash villain, I think. So who knows if we'll ever see that, because this man's dead now. And the way he died was like he didn't even get killed by the military on the beach. It was Mongal basically who killed him because she took down the helicopter, and then the helicopter cut off a bunch of branches from the trees, and they all impaled him, and then the helicopter exploded and also blew him up. So that was just like bogus as hell the way he died. But there's another character called Javelin who has a weapon that is called a javelin. It's like a big pointy stick. And he was killed by the military, but it was cool that his weapon lived on. He gave it to Harley, and Harley definitely made great use of it. So that was a cool weapon, but it sucks that we didn't actually see him ever use it. But I honestly don't care that much. Um, and then Mongal, I already said she was like the orange, I don't know, alien person. And yeah, I don't care about her either. Then there was Blackguard, played by Pete Davidson, and he actually called the military there, I think, or at least that's what he said. Unless he was just bluffing, hoping that they wouldn't kill him and that he would just join them. But they just shot him in the face right away. He was the first to go, and I knew he was gonna die before the movie even started. I also knew that Michael Rooker's Savant would die. I knew those two characters would die just because of the way that I view them, and I think maybe most people might. Like they're both kind of like just there for laughs, I guess. Uh, I mean, Michael Rooker not so much, but I knew he was gonna die just because of the relationship he has as an actor to the director James Gunn. They've worked together several times, like I said, in Guardians of the Galaxy, and they have a really like fun banter between them where James Gunn acts like he hates him. So for that reason alone, I knew he was gonna probably die in this movie. But as for the original Ratcatcher, the father of Ratcatcher 2, we did see a little bit of him, and I was surprised that that's who Taika Waititi was playing in the movie because I knew he was in the movie, but I thought he would have had like kind of a bigger, or I don't know, more important role. Um, and Taika Waititi is another actor where he, I think, might be used for laughs, and there was like maybe a little bit of that in this character, but I feel like it was kind of more of a lighthearted thing. But it was like more of a just like a cameo, like a celebrity cameo. But he died by overdose, and that went into Ratcatcher 2's like backstory and like her character and her character arc. Um, so I thought that was really cool. And then Rick Flag was killed by Peacemaker with a stab in the heart. And it's funny, I don't remember for sure if the Mortal Kombat movie used X-rays in the movie. But I definitely noticed it here. Like in the Suicide Squad, they did the X-ray either better or more memorably than the actual Mortal Kombat movie did. If it did it, I don't even remember for sure. Like maybe it's just because this just happened, but I don't know. But I was kind of bummed out that Rick Flag died because I was starting to like him, like I said, more in this movie. But I would say out of any other character, I definitely think that Rick Flag's death was probably the most impactful of any of the deaths. Like I actually like felt that death. Everybody else, like they're indispensable, so you don't really care what they if they die. Except for Captain Boomerang, like I said, I hated that. But here, Rick Flag, I feel like his death was at least earned, even if I didn't want him to die. Captain Boomerang, his death was not earned, so I just hated it. And then Polka-Dot Man sadly also bit the dust, and he was smashed by Starro. But it was after he kind of completed his arc, where we found out about him that his mom is what gave him his powers. She was a scientist at Star Labs, which is also, I think, part of the Flash mythology. And she wanted to create superheroes of her children, and she did that by experimenting on them, and that's how he got his powers. But his powers are like kind of a body condition that he has, where like he grows these skin tags or whatever, and those are the polka dots, but they're like these acidic or like other dimension thing that grows inside of him and on the outside of his body. And if he doesn't like expel them, which I think he does through his mouth, or I think he actually has. I don't know if his suit helps him like expel them, or if it's like telekinesis where he just like creates them. Um, but it might come out of his suit. But I think he also could spit them out. And if he doesn't, like I feel like he would probably explode. And they like grow super huge all over his body, so that's why he expels them. And when he does it, they're like acidic, so they burn anything in their path. So because of that, he's actually a powerful character. So that's why I thought he was really cool. And he never felt like a superhero. Like obviously, he probably did bad things, which is why he was locked up. Unless it was just an accident, and he just like got locked up because of something that just happened because of his powers. But his mom created him with the intent that he would be a superhero, and at the end, he like screams out because he is doing something heroic, and he's like, I am a superhero. So it makes all the stuff that he went through with all those experiments worth it in some way. But it sucks that he died though, right after that because he got a little bit too confident. And Starro crushed him. So rest in peace, Polka Dot Man. But the Thinker was ripped apart and squashed by Starro. When I first watched the movie, I thought he just got ripped in half or like his arm got ripped off, and I didn't register that Starro actually smashed him. So I was hoping the Thinker would actually have lived, but no, he was just completely like obliterated. So he's gone sadly. But I think his death was also a good death. Even though I do wish they would have kept the character around a little bit longer. Because he, in a way, is the real bad guy of the movie because he's the one that experimented on Starro, which kind of made Starro become evil, where he wanted to conquer Earth, but it was humans that like captured him in space, and they were doing all these experiments on him. Um, After they found out like his ability to create more of himself and like latch onto people's faces and take control of them. And through that process, I think Starro got bigger and bigger and bigger until he became this behemoth. But he wasn't always that big. But just that whole backstory was really cool. I think, and the way they showed it first in like news or like old video archives, and then to actually seeing him in the flesh, I thought that was really cool. And then Starro was killed by Harley. She stabbed it right in the eye, and then Ratcatcher's two's rats jumped inside of it and like started eating him alive. I thought that was a pretty gnarly and crazy thing. And that was a really cool death. I think probably the coolest death in the movie. Um, but man, imagine that. Like that's probably a horrible way to go. So like a bunch of little fucking things eating your eyeball, bro. and like all your nerves inside your head. Um, that's just nasty. But Starro was cool. Um, and then Peacemaker, we also see that he died, shot in the throat by Bloodsport when they had their face off because Bloodsport had a smaller bullet that went through Peacemaker's gigantic bullet. And he also had a great death. But then we find out in the post-credit scene, if you stay until the very, very end, he's actually not dead. And I kind of wish he did stay dead because finding out that he was still alive kind of took away from his death, which I said was like a good death. So it would have been good if it was final, but this motherfucker doesn't want to die. So it definitely goes with his character that he would like keep fighting to stay alive. But I kind of wish that he did die or stay dead. Um, and they kept him alive, of course, for the upcoming HBO Max series that he's gonna have. But I thought it could have been a prequel, and maybe it should have been a prequel because then that way he would have actually died here, and they could have still had the show, but it would just be set before the events of the Suicide Squad movie. But it is what it is. Um, and overall, the movie was good. I think if I was to rate it out of 10, I would give it an 8.5 out of 10. I think I gave the same score if I gave any score for Black Widow. But of these two movies, I'm not sure which one I like more. Like, I feel like they're both kind of like just average movies. Like, none of them are super good. They don't super stick out to me. They're both good, but I didn't really love any of them. But I think my initial reaction to Black Widow was better than my initial reaction to the Suicide Squad. And then I watched both of them again one other time, at least so far. Um, and the second time I watched Black Widow, I liked it way less than I did the first time. But the Suicide Squad, I feel like my opinion is pretty similar both times. But that opinion is a little bit less than my initial opinion to Black Widow. So maybe Black Widow's better, but I'm not 100% sure about that. But just comparing James Gunn to himself, his other movies, I would say that the Suicide Squad is probably better than Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 overall. But even then, I'm not sure. But the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie is definitely better than the Suicide Squad, in my opinion. Um, and it's not even close for me. But there were some things about Guardians Volume 2 that I didn't like I strongly didn't like. And that's why I feel like this one might be better. The Suicide Squad might be better than that. But there are also a lot of good things that I liked a lot more in that movie also from this one. So I'm not sure, but that's all I'm gonna say for now. So thank you for checking out my review. You could check out the movie on HBO Max or at the movie theaters. I would definitely recommend theaters because the whole aspect of Starro being in the movie is like awesome for seeing on the big screen. But I know people are getting worried about the Delta variant, so it is on HBO Max. If you have that, the ad-free plan, you can watch that for free. So thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.